This is Goku-san, DBZ, and this is of course Top 12 Sunday. And today I will be kinda a special Top 12 list, involving gaming. This is going to be a personal list for me, rather than neutral list. And what I will be doing today for Top 12 is my personal picks, my favorite Top 12 video game makers or developers. Now, I will mention a company here and there that no longer exists or was bought out by another company. But still, nevertheless, these particular companies make games I really love and enjoy. So keep that in mind. So, of course, I won't, since it's my personal, of course, it's not opinions from Facebook or any of that. And today, I think instead of doing honorable mentions before number one, I will do it today first. Okay, honorable mentions. First up, of companies that no longer exist, THQ, which was well known for making a lot of course, classic professional wrestling games. Two of my all-time favorites, WWF No Mercy, and they also, of course, did WCW NWO Revenge, which are both classic wrestling games of the N64 era, which I believe was the fifth generation consoles, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, fifth generation. Next honorable mention, Valve, which of course created basically Steam and stuff, and they can't count to number three. They did, of course, beloved franchises like, of course, the Half-Life franchise, Team Fortress, and my personal favorite, Portal, and Portal 2. Love the Portal games. They're fun, given you actually have to use your brain on it. Next honorable mention is a company I only really like one game from so far that I've played from the company, and that next honorable mention is Blizzard. A lot of people would probably have Blizzard actually on their top and high up. For me, I just never was a big Blizzard fan. I've personally never played StarCraft, though I need to. I'm just not a PC gamer. I'm a console gamer, which is why Valve isn't on the list. Though I will give acknowledgement for one particular game I like, and that is Diablo 3, and of course the expansion, Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. Love Diablo 3. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad it was released on, of course, the PS3. I've played that game and very much enjoyed playing it. Next honorable mention, SNK, which of course was the company of course, Neo Geo. And they developed beloved franchises like King of Fighting, Fatal Fury, and of course, Samurai Showdown. A lot of classic fighting games of the 1990s, especially of the 2D era fighting classics. Of course, SNK later on was purchased and taken over basically by Capcom. Next honorable mention, Midway, which of course no longer exists now. And Midway really produced some really fun games. They were best well known for a lot of sports games. One in particular, probably my favorite sports game that was developed by them, was called Hydro Thunder, which is my all-time favorite, probably, racing game, period. Which was a boat racing game, of course. Very much enjoyed it. It wasn't like I'm not a big sports game person. I like a few racing games here and there, and Hydro Thunder, without a doubt, is my favorite racing game. Second favorite would probably have to be Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on the original PlayStation. Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. Next honorable mention, Rare, which of course is a game developer that, of course, recently they released on the Xbox One special 30 games for $30 deal. Of course, they developed a pretty big, one of the hardest games of all time in the 90s called Battletoads, which is infamous for their difficulty. They also developed, of course, the beloved fighting game franchise, Killer Instinct. And of course, they only created Killer Instinct Gold on the N64, and then they recently, of course, was purchased, of course, by Microsoft. And they produced, of course, a newer one. They also produced games like Viva Pinata, which is probably more recent. And, of course, probably their best well-known is Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. And, of course, they also developed Perfect Dark 1 and 2. Now, one thing I have to say is Perfect Dark really was the true sequel to 007 GoldenEye. Fortunately, they weren't able to put it on the Rare Replay collection because Nintendo still owns sort of copyrights and everything. And also, they had to bow it out with MGM also, since they own the Bond name. So, that's why it did not appear with Perfect Dark. And yeah, really good games overall they've done over the years. A lot of classics, definitely on the N64. Next developer, Insomniac, which has produced a few different games. Probably most recently, their best game and best well-known is a game they did for the developer for the Xbox One called, of course, Sunset Overdrive, which, by the way, is a lot of fun, I want to add. It's a really fun game. And they're interesting on their games, I will give them that. Next honorable mention is Bungie, which of course co-developed with Microsoft, obviously, the well-known Halo franchise, which Microsoft though owns. And they also, of course, with Activision, developed what we know, sort of like, I call it like Halo, the second Halo franchise, really, and that being, of course, Destiny, which actually is kind of fun. It just sucks that you have to have internet to even play the game, which I think it's kind of stupid and sucks a lot. And I'm just not the biggest, like, MMO type gamer, but I do like the upgrade or grinding system and stuff in Destiny, and I like that at least it has a little bit of a single player mode. And at least you can actually play the game and enjoy it by yourself, and you don't have to be part of a group, though that's where most people go anymore, is multiplayer. And, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, by the way, of Midway, of course, their best one, though, which was purchased by Warner Brothers several years back, of course, that being Mortal Kombat. Now, starting the actual top list. Coming in at number 12. Atari, which really was the first real game maker. Of course, they both developed hardware and software. In more recent years, though, Atari did develop some really good classics, had come out on their console, you know, classics like Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Asteroids, Space Invaders, Pong. I mean, a lot of your true classics came out on Atari. And actually the first, of course, Donkey Kong. And of course you also had come out on the very first Mario game as well. Which was interesting, to say the least. But yeah, in more recent years, of course, they developed fighting games based on animes. Of course, they developed in more recent years the Dragon Ball Z video games. And, of course, they also did the Naruto games. And I think they also did, like, a One Piece. But, yeah, of course, they were gobbled up by another company that's on this list. Coming in number 11. Which is Konami. And Konami is a really enjoyable video game developer. Konami, for me personally, I actually like a couple of the Yu-Gi-Oh games, believe it or not, like Rose Duelist on the PS2. A lot of fun. Sort of like chess meets Yu-Gi-Oh. It's really fun. I personally enjoyed it. But that, and of course, I think, like a lot of people, I love Konami for actually a particular 2-game series, which was, of course, called Zone of the Enders. And that's the original Zone of the Enders is one of my probably top absolute favorite PS2 games of all time. Hands down. It's probably my number 2, if not my number 1 favorite game from Konami. And it's neck and neck with the next. And of course, that being the Metal Gear Solid games, also their biggest juggernaut. Metal Gear Solid 1, classic, one of my other top favorite PS1 games, definitely. And I kind of liked Metal Gear Solid 2, and I loved VR missions, by the way. Loved Metal Gear Solid VR missions. And still have those games, actually. I never got into Snake Eater the third, and I never even played the fourth, and of course I haven't played the fifth. I just kind of got out to me. I really only enjoyed the games up to maybe 2. So I only like the earlier games in the series. And I haven't actually played Metal Gear, which was back on the Super Nintendo era. But really fun games. And of course, the last Konami franchise I'll mention, Silent Hill, which is probably the creepiest survival horror games I've played, hands down. Silent Hill 2, I liked. Not as much as the first one, but I will give points to 2, because 2 was the one that introduced us to Pyramid Head, which has become probably one of the most influential, one of the best well-known creatures in all of survival horror gaming. I mean, it's basically immortal. You can't kill Pyramid Head. Pure and simple. And I love that they, of course, have Pyramid Head in the movies. That was pretty cool. He was one of the best parts, probably the best part of the sequel, Silent Hill Revelations. But I just really love the Silent Hill games, especially Silent Hill 1. That's just an amazing game. Though another franchise really started the survival horror genre, it took it way farther in the creepiness aspect. The first game, first time I played, let's just say I had nightmares for a week after I played it for the first time. And it's a pretty difficult game, keep in mind, because most of the time you only have like a ball bat or like a crowbar or something to hit these creatures. You don't really have much ammunition and stuff to speak of. Coming in number 10 is Naughty Dogs, which was, of course, gobbled up. But Naughty Dogs, of course, in more recent period of time, of course, they were purchased and bought out by Sony, obviously. Naughty Dogs, in more recent years, of course, developed games such as Last of Us, which has probably become their best well-known modern game. Definitely top-notch in the quality aspect, storytelling, voice acting. All around, very solid game, good gameplay, and has some creepy moments in it, and of course, is very bloody and gory. Also, of course, probably their biggest thing, which has become the figurehead franchise for Sony in more recent years, is, of course, the Uncharted series, which is good. Personally, for me, though it wasn't actually done by Naughty Dog, still kept all the same voice actors and a lot of the same developers overall. And I really enjoyed on the Vita Uncharted Golden Abyss. But if I had to choose in these series, I may have to go with Uncharted 3, personally. And of course, probably one of my all-time favorite platformers from the earlier days of Naughty Dogs. Of course, that being Crash Bandicoot, which was basically the mascot of the PS1 era of Sony. It was basically Crash Bandicoot versus, obviously, Mario and Sonic. It was a three-way war, which was pretty cool, and Crash was a really cool character. I really much enjoyed. My favorite was Crash 2, The Wrath of Cortex, was my personal favorite. Sorry for these. Seems like I'm apparently having some filming or difficulties looking at the way right now the freezing of frames, so I apologize for that. Coming in at number 9 is a tie between actually two of the most probably hated but created some personal favorite franchises of mine. The first of these two is, of course, EA games. which is considered very despised for a lot of good reasons, because I'm not a fan of their juggernaut franchise known as, of course, what was it now? Oh yeah, Sims, which has like 40-some games, like expansions and everything, like 20-some expansions to Sims 2, which is just insane and stupid. And they do have a bad history of sometimes over-milking some franchises, but to be fair, they've produced some enjoyable games over the years from EA. A few games I like here and there. And even I admit I have a guilty pleasure called a few of the older Madden games, and I also enjoyed some of their earlier stuff, such as can't really think off the top of my head though at the moment of other like particular franchises I really enjoyed from EA, but I liked them more in the earlier days. Tied with is another somewhat hated and despised Activision, though. To be fair, I did like Guitar Heroes back several years ago. I enjoyed it. Aerosmith Edition was a lot of fun and awesome. And of course, I really loved the Tony Hawk games. I didn't really paint the thing past Tony Hawk Underground 1. That was the last Tony Hawk game I ever played. I love Tony Hawk 2, was probably my favorite hands down, but I also enjoyed Tony Hawk 3 and 4. But, yeah, I noticed it started getting repetitive, but to be fair, Underground at least had a little bit of a story aspect to it, and I loved, of course, the Xbox version you could play, like your download music on your Xbox hard drive. That was one thing that made Underground really fun and cool. And which is why I still love the Tony Hawk 2 and Tony Hawk Underground to this day. Coming in at number 8, LucasArts. And yeah, the only reason why LucasArts made it to number 8 is because of making Star Wars video games, and which I love. Which of course I love the trilogy Super Star Wars and a Super Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Classics, hard as crap to beat, but a lot of fun, nevertheless. Also really like Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Star Wars Shows of the Empire, and yes, I even like Star Wars Episode 1, Speed Racer, the pod racing game. I just enjoyed it. I'm sorry. I just liked a lot the pod racing game. I don't know why. It was also one of my favorite parts of Episode 1 movie. It was just cool. And yeah, just like Shows of the Empire, one of probably my favorite graphic novel collection from Star Wars thus far. And the video game is a lot of fun, personally for me. It is hard and it's got clunky controls, but look when it was made though. It was made in the 90s, so you gotta be forgiving from the time period it came from. Hasn't aged well in graphics, but graphics isn't the most important part to me, of course. It's more about enjoying the gameplay, good storytelling. That's what it's more about for me. And I've just loved a lot of Star Wars games over the years that LucasArts has done and co-done with other companies. Speaking of, coming in at number 7 is a tie. And the first I'll mention is the company that co-developed with LucasArts two of my particular favorite Star Wars games, and that being Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. Hands down, Knights of the Old Republic 1 is my #1 favorite Star Wars game of all time. Pure and simple. It is. And it's also, I think, one of the best RPGs of all time. It's just a lot of fun. And I love how, of course, I chose the Sith path, obviously, with Revan. And I love the story of Revan. And I just like that world of the Old Republic era, thousands of years before the movies. And, of course, of others, games, one of my personal favorite earlier games was a little game I was introduced to on the original Xbox also, or the Knights of the Old Republic. And that game, which I ended up playing because I loved, on the original Xbox, of course, Fable. And this game was similar to Fable, could choose good and bad. and that game was called Jade Empire. Love Jade Empire. If I had to choose my top 3 favorite, hands down, games from, right now at least, from BioWare, number 1 would probably be Knights of the Old Republic, then probably Jade Empire, and third will be the first of this series, and that being, of course, the series called Dragon Age. Dragon Age Origins, obviously. And I really love Dragon Age Origins. It's a lot of fun. I like the selection, and it's a pretty good sized world you play in. It's very entertaining and enjoyable. Now, unlike a lot of people, I have not personally played Dragon Age 2, and I know I need to. Quite a few years since it came out, and it's super cheap now. You can buy it like less than $10. So yeah, I need to play it, I know. And eventually, Inquisition, which one of my friends swears by and is obsessed over the Dragon Age series. And the second one tied for number 7 is Ubisoft. And Ubisoft is a lot of fun. Now, obviously, personally of games I have not played, I need to play, is Watch Dogs. Because people have said it's pretty fun, and said I would enjoy it probably because, obviously, I'm a big fan of the Assassin's Creed series. And actually, I just got the new Assassin's Creed. Haven't started playing it yet, but I'm so stoked to gain play in 1800s London, and given you're gonna have like special things with Charles Darwin and other characters, which I'm kind of looking forward to. I haven't actually played Assassin's Creed 2. I know. I haven't played Assassin's Creed 1. I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed 3, which was the first one I played. I've played Liberation, which was interesting, not as good as regular Assassin's Creed 3. Black Flags is a lot of fun. The naval battles were the best part of 3, and that did not like Unity at all. Now, however, I actually enjoyed Assassin's Creed Rogue. Interesting. Didn't like Unity, but I liked Rogue. Go figure. But, yeah, overall, I just really enjoy the Assassin's Creed series. I've just enjoyed it overall. Yeah, there isn't a lot of evolution in the game mechanics, but there are things they can perfect, obviously, with the Assassin's Creed series. But the storytelling, it's kind of convoluted and stuff in areas, but still really interesting overall, and I'm looking forward to playing more games in the series. Just one of those few American-made series that I actually really enjoy. Coming in at number 6 is another tie. It is between, first off, Sony, which of course has co-done a lot of stuff over the years. Like, it partially works with other companies to develop, of course, characters like Crash Bandicoot, and it produced an incredible JRPG from Sony. And that game is called The Legend of Dragoon. Incredible JRPG on the original PlayStation 4 disc game. Just a lot of fun to play. If you include all the side quests and everything, you're looking at probably a 100+ hour game. It's one of the only JRPGs I've found that could actually rival Final Fantasy in play length. When you play everything, it's just a lot of fun. And very enjoyable. And if you've never played Legend of Dragoon, if you ever get a chance, seriously, try it out. You can get the game pretty affordable. You can probably find it for around like $20 or so, which is good. You might want to get it before the price skyrockets on it, like a lot of other RPGs have been doing over the last few years. Have been going up from the 90s. So if you see it, and you have a PS1 or a PS2 or a PS3 that can play it, of course, get it. Seriously, if you like RPGs, you will enjoy it highly. I highly recommend it for anyone who enjoys RPGs or JRPGs. The other one tied at number 6 is Microsoft, which of course co-developed, obviously, the Halo series, and they also introduced one of my future loves with a lion head, and of course that being the Fable franchise. Fable is one of my top 5 favorite RPG franchises of all time. Yes, that's right, Fable. It's one of my top 5. Maybe it's Fable 3 is a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't know, and I don't care if other people don't like Fable. I love it. I really enjoy the series. I just get a kick out of it. I love the game mechanics. Though, there's problems, but there's improvements also in other aspects. Like, the world's way larger in Fable 3 than it was in Fable 1. The Fable 1 still had the best, I think, magic mechanics in it. But, very enjoyable series. Coming in at number 5. Sega! That's right, Sega comes in number 5 for producing the Valkyrie Chronicles, for producing, obviously, Sonic the Hedgehog, classic platformers. They've produced some really enjoyable games over the years, Sega has. And of course, they also created one of my all-time favorite games. Well, yeah, on the Dreamcast, which was called Jet Grind Radio, or aka Jet Set Radio. And they co-deal with Microsoft on the original Xbox, Jet Set Radio Future, which is epic. It's just a lot of fun. Love Sega games. And of course, the can't deny the Phantasy Star games are a lot of fun. Phantasy Star Universe on PS2 is a lot of fun. And I love how at the end they do it like chapters and show like previews of the next chapter, and they have like a intro and stuff to beginning of the chapter, make it feel sort of like a TV show series or something, which is just a lot of fun. The way they do that, I just find that refreshing and different. You don't see that much in video games. And that's one thing, Sega likes to experiment with stuff, and that's one of the reasons why Sega is one of my top 5 favorites. Coming in at number 4, Nintendo. I'm not the biggest Nintendo fan, of course, but I do appreciate them for things they've developed over the years. Obviously, such as the classic Mario games. They've done good. Classic games also, like a little series called Legend of Zelda, which is a lot of fun. Now, I have actually never played Super Metroid. Don't kill me. That's a game I'd like to get, and trust me, I'd like to get before it gets too much more expensive, because last time I checked, Super Metroid's going for about $40 right now on Super Nintendo. And if I'm going to get it, I need to get it before it goes any more expensive, before it's out of my price range. Which, $40 is kind of expensive for Super Nintendo, but I understand it's collector's item. It's really high in demand for retro gamers. And of course, my probably number 1 favorite Nintendo franchise, Pokemon. I know, I'm guilty of the Pokemon thing. My favorite Pokemon game, hands down, is probably Pokemon Yellow Edition. Which, of course, you start out with Pikachu, and you ended up getting a Bulbasaur. Of course, you also got Squirtle and Charmander. So you ended up with all of them, which was one of the things I liked about it. It was more on, like, the TV show. So, obviously, that's why it's my favorite, because I loved, like, the first season of the TV series coming in the late 90s. I love, to this day, the Indigo League. The original first season. I just love that to this day so much. I feel over the years, as the show progressed, the show got worse and worse. And just became too monotonous and the same old thing over and over and over. There's only so many times you can handle Team Rocket. I'm sorry, Jesse and James, but you just got old. Yeah, that's one thing I liked about, at least in the actual video games, you did actually have different characters. It wasn't always Team Rocket. I would say of the newer games, my personal favorite is probably Pokemon Y is probably my favorite. I really enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, my favorite, hands down, is Yellow. Coming in at number 3. Once Upon a Time was probably rivaled for being number 1, but as time progresses, it drops in rank. Capcom. And the only reason why Capcom is still in my top 3 is because Capcom produced some of my favorite game franchises of all time. Capcom produced the Resident Evil series. Resident Evil has become a shadow of its former self, obviously. It used to be this incredible survival horror games. To me, the last true Resident Evil was Code Veronica / Veronica X. Resident Evil 4, I think, was the last game that I actually liked from the series, though. 4 was when it started going more towards the action route, though it still had elements of horror, to be fair. To me, Resident Evil 5 onward, the franchise is dead to me. Just is. Resident Evil 4 is the last one I actually enjoyed playing, but Resident Evil Veronica, to me, was the last true Resident Evil game of the series, because it was the last real one that actually involved traditional zombies, with the T-Virus, and also Umbrella. That was the last game, really, of Umbrella. Unless you accept, of course, the remake, and Resident Evil 0, which was the true prequel, and all of these other games on the side. But yeah, it was the last true game involving Umbrella. With that nutcase guy who also cross-dressed as his sister. That takes split personality to a whole new level. But it's very enjoyable. And of other franchises, obviously the Street Fighter franchise. Street Fighter 2 remains to this day to be my favorite fighting game of all time. I just love Street Fighter 2. Or Street Fighter 2 Turbo is my favorite version, though, on Super Nintendo. Other franchises and stuff, reasons why I love Capcom so much is Mega Man. Mega Man X. Best Mega Man game ever done. And I did like they remade it, and did a very good job being 100% loyal to the original game with the remake, Maverick Hunter X. But Mega Man X is one of the few Super Nintendo games I still have to this day. And I'm proud of it being part of my Capcom collection. Plus I have that thing that was released on PS2, which is like 6, I think, 1 through 6 or something like that, of Mega Man X, which is awesome, by the way. Any Mega Man collector, get a hold of the regular Mega Man collection and Mega Man X collection. Great. And of course I love the Mega Man Legends 1 and 2, which were the RPG Mega Man games, which were awesome. Coming at number 2, Namco, now known as Namco Bandai, which of course more recently purchased Atari. But they've produced two of my top 5 favorite fighting game franchises of all time. They produced Soul Calibur, which Soul Calibur 5 was a complete letdown, and also Tekken, which I did not like Tekken 6. But yeah, I love Soul Calibur and I love Tekken. My favorites of each series would probably have to be, for Soul Calibur, it's probably the original Soul Calibur on the Sega Dreamcast, and my favorite of the, well, and then after that probably Soul Calibur 3 on the PS2. But for Tekken, it's probably Tekken 3 on the original PlayStation, and Tekken, then probably a tie between Tekken Tag and Tekken 4 on the PS2. Love those games to death. But, yeah, Namco just produces really fun and enjoyable games. That's one thing I have to say about Namco. I just really enjoy their games. And I love how they've had, like, sort of crossover type things. And I love the Xbox version of Soul Calibur 2 with Spawn. Number 1. I'm sure everyone saw this coming. Square Enix comes in number 1, hands down, easily unrivaled number 1 favorite game developer, game maker. Of course, it makes the Square and Enix merge and stuff, obviously. So you have a lot of franchises like Dragon, Warriors, or Dragon Quest, whichever you want to call it. You also have, and by the way, if you're wondering that, and also the first, of course, Chrono Trigger, you notice characters look like Dragon Ball Z characters. Well, that's because the one who did the artwork for those games was the same guy who created Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Akira Toriyama, which was, of course, the artist who did the Dragon Ball Z manga and anime. Yeah, that's the one who did all the artwork for Squaresoft at that time. Beloved Chrono Trigger, which is probably regarded as probably one of the top 2 or top 3 best games ever made by Square. It's probably tied up there with, obviously, Final Fantasy VI, aka Final Fantasy III on Super Nintendo, which is another few games I have still on Super Nintendo, is that. If you're going, I mean, yeah, I have it on PS1 and stuff, but if you're going to really play Final Fantasy VI or 3, play it legit. Play it on the Super Nintendo. Because they took away the original opening music, Terry's song, away from the awesomeness of the beginning. Like, the music was just incredible for 16-bit era. The game is insane. It really pushed the graphics engine and stuff, the technology of that time, really to its limits when that game came out, because it was like 1994 or something when that game came out. And that, now to be fair, the first game that introduced me to the Final Fantasy series, though, was Final Fantasy VII, like a lot of people, though my favorite is Final Fantasy VIII. But Final Fantasy VI would probably have to be in my top 3 favorite Final Fantasy games. Probably Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy VI, and then probably Final Fantasy, probably a tie between Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy maybe 9 for me. But I just love those games. And there's just something special about the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy was the game that introduced a lot of Western audiences, people like me and others, to the JRPG genre. I mean, there's very much a difference, mechanically speaking, in the system and gameplay between a RPG or a Western RPG and, of course, a traditional Japanese RPG. One difference between RPG and JRPG: most of the time in JRPGs, characters look like anime characters. That's the way the designs and stuff you'll notice with most Final Fantasy games. And say, of course, the co-done with Disney Interactive love franchise, of course, Kingdom Hearts. And, of course, they produce the Tomb Raider games. And there's just so many games and franchises from Square I love. There's no rival, no competition to it for being my #1 favorite game developer maker of all time. But that's my top 12 favorite game makers / developers. Tell me who your favorite game makers are. Leave a comment below and let me know. Please subscribe, thumbs up the video, share if you like any of my lists, and stay tuned for, of course, 3 comic book reviews I'll be working over today and tomorrow. And also, as always, I hope you all have a good upcoming week. Peace out. Hopefully someday we do. And, of course, follow me at twitter.com/GokuSunDBZ and also at Google Plus/GokuSunDBZ. And until next time, I'll see you later here in YouTube land.